So about the principles, there is a question from Dmitry in the chat. Check ball play, I don't think that we should talk about it because it's very simple. I mean, you just try to use the qualities of the player to trick the other team into something. We have, it's easy if you just look at our games, we have 5 check ball plays and counter plays for every play, depending on how the defense plays. So it's very simple. So maybe some other time if we talk, we can talk about just check ball plays. In the live ball offense, this is how I split the game. So there is a situation at all times. There is a situation, a player who has the ball. That's a situation one-on-one with the ball. I have the ball and I have a one-on-one situation. So we have that player, and on the other side, we have possible situations, 2 against 2 without the ball, or a possible situation where a player approaches the player with the ball, so 2 against 2 with the ball. So there are no other situations. At every moment, there is isolated situation of possible one-on-one without the ball. And this is how we practice. So in 99% of our practice, team practices, we play only 2 against 2. Because my players are now good enough to recognize any kind of weak side help and just to pass to the third player. So third player is not at any importance with us. Now, we're trying to make our 2 against 2 game as good as possible, because in my opinion, 3x3 game at the highest level, and from the first day of Team Liman, I split it like there is one-on-one with the ball and 2. And so that's how I think about offense also. So these are those situations. And to make it simple for the players, we have 2 possible things in all situations. So if we are playing pick and roll, so 2 against 2 with the ball, so on ball screen, there is 2 possible scenario. One is that defense switches, and second is that defense follows or trails. And we practice those 2 situations, recognizing those 2 situations. And it's not a secret, it's very simple. If they switch, we play repeated screen. If they switch bad, the second screen, we play slip in the second screen. It's very simple. But every screen is made not with the idea for the second screen to happen, but to make damage from the first screen. It is a mini game. We want to win the mini game first screen, and then if it's necessary to make the second screen, we try to make it. That's if the defense switches. If the defense follows, we have a very good lean screen of the offensive player and pop. I call it short pop because we don't go to as far away as we can, just a 2-step pop for the open 2-point shot or for the penetration of the offense of the player with the ball. That's for the screener. And for the player with the ball, if defense is switching, if he recognizes that defense is switching, he's not penetrating inside. So he's not going deep. We're going wide and away from the basket. Why? Because the defensive player has to attack him, so I will draw it, maybe, I don't know if you see. So let's say, can you guys see this? Or it's, no, is this better? Can you see this? No? Yeah, it doesn't matter. This won't work. I will explain it. So if I'm the player whose player made a screen and I'm about to switch to the guy, if the player with the ball is going wide and away from the basket, I have to go to chase him because he will shoot an open 2-pointer, and we are practicing shooting from 8 meters or so. We are taking those shots. When I'm approaching this player, it's impossible for me to defend the second screen. Why? Because it's coming from my back and very soon. So that's why the player, if the defense is switching, our ball handler is not going deep attacking the basket. We're going wide and away from the basket to invite the switcher to defend us. And if he starts approaching us, we're at that moment he's approaching, we're getting the second screen, or we're attacking him to his strong side. And it's very hard to defend. If defense is following, ball handler is going, this is our rule that I made, is going one step in, half step wide, one step in. So one step towards the basket, half step wide. We want to commit the follower and the player who is shadowing. We want to commit them as long as we can, to buy time for the shooter to set up in a good position, or to make a mistake in the possible late switch or something like that. There is an exception where the Princeton started playing against us. They started following the first. I started playing handoffs with the fake handoff on the first screen. So I let the player go, and then I close the position and make a second handoff. And we lost to Princeton just once this year in finals of. We have a 9-1 score this season just by adjusting the pick and roll game. It's hard to explain. Sometimes, hopefully, in the court, I can explain those details, but I think you get the point, hopefully. Hakim, I now saw that you wrote this, so thank you for watching this until now. Hopefully, we'll see you again some other time. So those are the only situations that the players need to think about. So I make it simple for them, and we just keep repeating, because there is actually nothing else that can happen on the court that can surprise you. There can be variations in different positions on the court, but if you get a lot of repetition about those things in the player's mind, those situations, they solve very easily. As you can see now this season, last season, Stefan Kojic, who very rarely played pick and roll, we made him be probably the best pick and roll decision. And in the stats, he was also the player with the most valuable, I don't know, those points, whatever. But he's a smart player, but he developed very fast just by getting into a lot of those situations, the only 2 or 3 situations that could happen. So that is our live ball offense. So the principles, we have 3 principles, depending on what type of player gets the ball in the defensive rebound or is supposed to clear the ball. I have 2 types of players. I have ball handlers, used to be Stojacic and Kojic, and I have non-ball handlers. This is how I call them, Vasic and Ratkov. Depending who gets the ball below the basket, we have what we do exactly. So where we want to set ourselves free for the outlet pass, and how we want to do it, and what happens after. If the ball handler gets the ball below the basket, there are 2 possible situations. At that moment, we can have one ball handler in the game, the only ball handler who is below the basket, or 2. So if my roster at the moment is Stojacic, Kojic, and Ratkov, so 2 ball handlers in the game, that means that one ball handler is always beyond the arc and in a possible position to get the outlet pass. We want that whenever 2 ball handlers are in the game. Whenever 2 non-ball handlers are in the game, we want the ball handler to get the ball outside, wherever, doesn't matter where, as soon as possible, because we practice decision-making just for those 2 players. We don't have to practice. I don't want to practice the players what they're not supposed to do during the game. There's no need for that. I want to get them in as many situations to recognize, and ball handlers who make decisions, I want them to have the ball as soon as possible. So to explain it just a little bit better, if I have 2 ball handlers in the game at the moment and one is below the basket, the other one has to set free and to get the ball, and the ball handler below the basket has to clear the paint immediately, because the 3rd player involved could be Vasic, who already got the front position in the transition from defense to offense in his player. We never clear the paint to the corners. I never use the corners. I'm playing something that I called the short court game. So whatever we do, if this is the paint, this is the 3-point line. Whatever we play, I never use the full court. So I always use just the half length. This is the basket. I don't know if you see. So if we are playing, doesn't matter, if we are playing a pick and roll game here, a screen is coming. My players are never here. I'm using just half court. So we never clear, this player would never clear to the corner or to the corner. We will clear close to the situation. Why? Because if you're in the corner, doesn't matter which one. If the player is here, for example, my third player who is not involved in a pick and roll game, the defensive player can get in a stance to see both the player and the situation there. So he has time, because most of our passes after the pick and roll are passes to the empty space, not to the player himself. So this player could really intercept a lot of our passes inside. So most of our passes are lob passes because we want pulling of the defense to be called. And if we throw the ball to the empty space, they're called. But if this player, our offensive player, is here, the defensive player can see both things. And if offensive player is here, defensive player cannot see both things. If he puts himself in the position to see both things, backdoor cut and sealing him happens immediately. So he has to stay face to face and not being involved in the 2 against 2 game. That's what I call the short. So I'm using half of the half court all the time. We're using that. So that's very important, because if this player, defensive player, wants to help just one step, if he wants to help just one step, like help and recover, you see the distance of the potential pass of the ball handler. The distance is like 3 meters. So the ball travels half of the second and we have an open shot immediately. So this is after Stefan got injured and Ratko got injured. This is where I positioned Maxim Kovacevic during this season. That's why he had so many open shots, because Kojic is a very good ball handler. We practice a lot of off the dribble passes and he sees everything. So I position Maxim here, and just because he's very close, the ball comes very fast. If he was here, and doesn't matter if this guy wants to help and recover, the ball travels too long. The ball travels too long, and for the 12-second shot clock, if something happens here and the ball travels here and he successfully recovers, we don't have a second opportunity to make damage. In this situation, even if this player recovers properly, this player can come to the screen. We have time. We have 3-4 seconds to make the second screen. I avoid one-on-one situations because I think most damage in this game will happen from when you have a little advantage, when someone is helping you a little bit. So I think this is very important. I can speak about this for 2 hours. So there are many details that we incorporate here, but I think you get the main point. It's important. It gives you a big advantage. I can name, we don't have a lot of time, so I can name all these possible situations. For example, if Vasic gets the ball and if non-ball handler gets the ball and ball handler and non-ball handler are here, what happens? So it's very simple math. If you have can you see this? This is M. Non-ball handler, ball handler, non-ball handler. Ball handler, ball handler, non-ball handler. So you don't have a lot of situations that you need to define. So these are only possible situations in my team that we can have. So in these rosters, this is one possible roster, this is other possible roster. The only thing that can happen is that non-ball handler gets the ball or ball handler gets the ball. Here, non-ball handler gets the ball or ball handler gets the ball. And you have four situations to define what happened. Not too many. So define what we will do when non-ball handler gets the ball in this roster. And it's very simple. The players can get it. And after some repetition, you can easily implement it and they will start just doing it if you look at our team, we don't really think what will happen. We're just doing things. I mean, we're not perfect. We're trying to be, and from season to season, we're getting better in recognizing this situation. Above all principles that I mentioned, in my opinion, give the players freedom to improvise at any moment. So whenever you recognize that anything that you can do will bring advantage to our team, doesn't matter if it's against principles, do it. Feel free to do it. Don't be afraid to do it. Do it. No one will put pressure or whatever. So the players, they are the ones making decisions. If they think that they should make decisions only like robots according to what we preach, our teams will not get the full potential. They need to believe and to feel that they have the freedom of making decisions at all times. And this is the most important thing. So we can talk about principles and train about principles, and we do, and they like it. But inside those principles, whenever you need to give them freedom, whenever they want to make a decision outside of that, make it. We will fix it if it's a mistake. We will fix it. We'll play hard D. We'll fix it. Doesn't matter. Any player, if he feels he wants to play one-on-one on someone, play it. Go score if you think you can score. We avoid those situations because my players learned that we spend way too much energy in one-on-one situations. That's why we try to help each other to save energy and to spend that energy into defense, to play as hard defense as we can. Because I think in this game, in the game of 3x3, defense is what brings wins and championships, like in 5-on-5, in my opinion. But this is my philosophy. And now, I think I spoke like way too much, but I didn't say everything that I wanted to. So maybe now I see a question: how many times a week do you train during the season and in preparation for the season? How long does the training last? How do you build your workout? This is a very complex question. During the season, sometimes we don't have a single practice between the tournaments. We were living in China. Sometimes our flights were 30 hours long. In my opinion, so my major is strength and conditioning, sports performance. So what I think in any sports is the most important is that the player feels the best, both physically, emotionally, and mentally, when he's supposed to go to the competitive game. So if I feel, or if the players feel and tell me that they are even a little bit tired, we don't practice anything. So there were, during this season where we played, I don't know, Vasic played 80-something games during last season. 80-something games. So that's like, I don't know if you can imagine what's that. With all those travels, a lot of weeks we didn't practice anything. I gave them, sometimes we played some frisbee, we played some soccer, but so if we feel that we are even a little bit tired, we don't practice anything during the season. But sometimes we practice. It depends on if we are traveling somewhere close, or if we play the tournament inside the China, we use maybe 1 or 2 days rest, and then we practice. Nothing hard during the season. When we have a couple of weeks in between, which is very rare, then I make a little short-term program. If I have 3 weeks, I make 2 weeks strong, 1 week reduction. Depends what we're doing. So how many times preparation for the season? Let's say that most of the time in the off season, we are practicing once a day with the ball and once a day fitness, but we don't always use weights. Sometimes we do just recovery practices. Sometimes we do different things. So this is hard. How long does the training last? The training lasts almost never more than 1 hour. How do I build my workouts? My workouts are always built in isolating the situations that I want to make principles of from the game. So we almost always I start with some technique work and footwork to make the players all feel comfortable in spin moves, in preparing the pick and roll, in making screens, in rolling with the front pivot. We do those things without emphasizing the end result of scoring or something like that. We emphasize the details in the footwork and in the preparation of body positioning. Most of the practices we start like that, or with some fun shooting exercises where we compete against each other. After that, in the off season, we play a very hard 2-against-2 games, sometimes without the dribble, so the ball is with me, and they try to make advantage without the ball in cooperation of 2-against-2. Those are primarily defensive exercises, because if you make the players want to play defense for 12 seconds without the ball, and you keep repeating that, then when they get into the competitive game, they will eat everyone in defense, in my opinion. So building workouts is also a complex question. So every time I start with technique or fun shooting drills, we also end with some fun shooting drills, like we play in some money, I don't know, half court shots or something like that, and then we go to a beer or pizza or whatever with that money that we gather. Who is better, one-on-one player, Vidovic or Stojacic? Of course, Vidovic. That's what kind of question is that? Vidovic is best player ever. For the guys who don't know that guy, the Vidovic, he's the young player from the national team that I used to coach for his whole life in FIBA. A little bit. How much time do you spend in practicing one-on-one, 2-against-2, and 3-extreme? Is the most focused on 2-against-2? Yes. So by far the most focus in our practices is 2-against-2, because in every 2-against-2 drill, you have a lot of one-on-one isolated situations. As I said, I will interfere and stop the practice every time that I see that we are not doing fundamentals properly. So if someone is not playing, not making advantage, if we're playing, for example, 2-against-2 until 4, open game, transition game, they can use me as an outlet pass sometimes not. If I see someone not making advantage for himself, I stop and I say, you didn't make advantage, and I will be very boring. So the most focus in the practices are 2-against-2. Just in the off season, I give players one-on-one, because it's very hard. They're very competitive and able to happen, especially because I have very different type of players. So I don't know, Stefan Kojic and his body, if he plays against Vasic and his body one-on-one, that's like not going to finish very, very good for our season. So 3x3 we play. So last season we play a lot with the Chinese national team, a lot 3x3 games, a lot. I mean, twice a week we played, like, depends on one part of the off season, but maybe from 3 to 10 scrimmages. Sometimes what I want to achieve, depends what I want to achieve. Sometimes the games are short until 3 points with short breaks. Sometimes the games are 7 points, 11 points, 16, 21. Sometimes we play games to 31 when I'm working in some specific energy demands that I want to achieve during the off season. There's another question. Could you please compare pick and roll and handoff in terms of scoring efficiency? Are they equal, or one of them better for your team? I think that actually my team started implementing the handoffs 3 years ago in this game. I think it's way more dangerous. But so in scoring efficiency, I think it's much better scoring efficiency for a handoff. Why? Because there are more situations where you can trick the defense, where defense can make mistakes. That's why I started implementing the handoffs and trying to teach the players some things about getting the proper position for the handoffs. We very rarely play off the dribble handoffs or dribble pitches. So we play stationary handoffs. That's the most dangerous play in 3x3, in my opinion. So are they equal, or one of them better for your team? For my team, it's better. Handoff is way better, but the problem is getting into situations that you're able to play the handoff with having enough time on your shot clock. that's a thing to think about, and we can talk about it, like I said, some other time. We already spent some money from Dmitry. He bought the whole session now, so we can have a full session. I try to use as much hand from check ball plays. You see that we use almost every play is involving a handoff or running around the player with the ball. So I like those situations. Do you have specific principles for special situations? End of the game, down, up 1 point, 2 seconds left on a shot clock, check ball. We have specific principles for special situations. In my opinion, in game of 3x3, there is actually just one special situation, or maybe two. One special situation is free throw. You have defensive free throw positioning, offensive free throw positioning. We have a couple of things that we do there. A main idea is to try to hide the shooter behind the free throw, the guy who, if we are defense at the free throw line, starting to be offense, we try to hide the shooter there. Or if they act smart and position a player next to him, then we move that player who is shooter to the rebounding spot and put some other guy outside, most likely Vasic, that we will try to exploit in the transition for him to fight for the front position and to abuse it for the inside lob pass. In the offense free throw situations, so we have some principles of our transition defense, and they are involved in our special situation when we are shooting for the free throw. End of the game, down, up 1 point. We are most of the time going for 1 point. So whenever we're chasing score, we think that the other teams are focusing way more on stopping you from shooting. And we are trying to go to the more safe shots. If we have open 2 point shot, of course, but we are trying actually to trick the teams that we will shoot the 2 points and then go for the 1 point. 2 seconds left on a shot clock, check ball. Ball goes to the coach, and he tries to shoot or trick someone. The question, you don't practice in 3x0? No, we never practice 3 against 0. So only when I'm introducing some maybe new set play, which is very rare, I just position them on the court and I'm playing one player to try to show them what can happen and what they're supposed to do, how to hit the defensive player or something like that. But we never do it like, okay, now just, like kids, just, okay, you're supposed to go screen there and then do it without the players. We never do that. How much time do you spend in rival scouting? What are you looking when you analyze a rival? Last season, we didn't do scouting at all. So we had confidence that we are ready for any situation that can occur. We already know all the players. I just type them. We have a group, so even though we're in the same hotel, I type them in the group, in the chat, just a little notes about 1 or 2 things that we should focus as a team on defensively and offensively, and just emphasize the biggest strengths of the opposing players. Although they know that those players better than me. I mean, I know all the players now, but there's no need to do the individual scouting now, and team scouting, nothing can surprise us now. Last season is not really a good thing to talk about because we were terrible with injuries. We didn't play in our full roster a single game, and it was very hard for us in that way because we had some players that were out for so long, they tried playing and we changed the system a little bit, so it was different even in scouting. But when we are healthy and everything's doing like fine, I don't do any scouting, like cutting the videos or something like that, because we know that we're ready for anything that can happen because we have principles for all the possible situations. I mean, I'm speaking in theory. Of course, you will make mistakes. The other players will trick us, whatever. But this is a part of psychology also. If you make the players believe that we're ready for anything, the players will believe that they're ready for everything. And in terms of energy, this is how the universe works. If they even think they are a little better, they are a little better in the upcoming game. Is there a leader in Team Liman who defines the strategy in timeouts, or everyone has equal voice? Actually, in 95% of the tournaments, I'm at the tournament and I'm yelling from the stands. You probably heard me in every tournament. I'm telling them what to do actually and what we're looking for. Although coaching is like forbidden, it's not forbidden in my opinion. It's the most stupid thing. If they don't make a reaction towards me, it's not. Yeah, they got the technical. We got it a few times, but I think it's when their heart rate is 200 and their heads are burning. I think it's more important for them to get an outside information from someone they trust, and even maybe the opposing team will shoot one free throw, but we know what we're looking for. Sometimes the players they forget what we made a deal about and what we're looking for in the game. And I just try to bring the focus back to our thing, what we made a deal about, what we want in the game. And doesn't matter if it's 9th minute of the game or first, if we keep doing our things, what we're supposed to do, most of the time, we don't have a problem. So we got a technical a couple of times. We even got it sometimes when we didn't deserve, but that's part of the game, So any more questions or whatever, you can turn on the mic if someone too lazy to type or whatever. I'll have some wine to fresh up my throat and my liver.
Yeah, great. I started typing, but I think it's better to ask. It takes time. A bit about Chinese national women team. In that team, there are no such equal players size-wise as in Team Liman. I mean, in Team Liman, you get almost everybody around. I think Vasic is 199 and Kuic 199, and others like Stojic 194. So almost everyone around 195. But in China, ladies, there is one big girl, post player or something. So do you have the same principles there, or
no?
Is it different a bit?
So I'll try to answer shortly. Of course, no. Defensive principles are with Team Liman. In 99% of the situations, for example, in defense, we switch 99% of the situations, unless we make a deal to surprise some team. For example, a couple of times, Team Amsterdam, we tried surprising by following, and then in the middle of the game by changing or something like that. Unless we make a deal about it, we always switch. In Team China, women, it's different. So some players are switching, and some players are always switching, and some players are always following. So if I tried when we came to China in January, I tried to do some things that they to practice to recognize if this player is with that player, to do that, but it's impossible. Not because they are not smart or something like that. They're smart, but it's very important. It's very hard for short time to bring so many possible recognizing situations in the game. So it's very simple. Some players are always switching, some players are always following. And in the offense, it's almost the same principles. So we are trying to use our our advantage, and we use the big girl most of the time, and focusing on how to defend her. We got other open shots or backdoor cuts. That's what we try to emphasize and to use. Also, the MVP of the World Cup was the girl who was the guard. In my opinion, that I don't know how they decided to do that. The big girl is by far the MVP of the World Cup for sure. I mean, the whole tactics were for the whole World Cup based around her. The whole offensive and defensive also, because she was always shadowing the paint. Doesn't matter who she was guarding, and not going out for the. So it's completely different. Maybe we can make another talk sometimes about just the Team China, because it's interesting. So the only difference between men and women Team China is that from the beginning we couldn't use the best players for the men's team, they were away most of the time. They go for the university league and come back. And women's team from the beginning, from January, they were all there and we were practicing. We had continuity until the World Cup. I mean, we were lucky at the World Cup also, to be honest. We had some luck, but you have to have luck in sports most of the time. It's not about the knowledge, but the difference is we had a continuity of practice with the same players that will play the World Cup, and they play the World Series. So that's the difference. Hopefully I answered. I don't know.
Okay, if anyone still has a question, he can interrupt, but if there are no questions, I would like to thank Milan a lot. I think it was an amazing session with a lot of insight, and it will be posted online. It's recorded and it will be posted online, and we will run the question and answer session later on Instagram as well, as I do it with after all the talks. And there was a test format, this live. I think it went amazing, and I think we can keep this type of format later with other coaches or with Milan as well. And thank you everybody who joined us from all over the world. It's something like a big conference, I think, the 3x3 conference, global. And I think everybody hope that this pandemic ends soon and we can finally hit the courts. In some countries, it is allowed. What I know that I know that Slovenians, Dinus, also told me that they are practicing, but I hope that the situation will be back to normal as soon as possible, and we will back in the courts, and we will finally got the game go, because I think everybody is hungry for the game, and we meet each other on court soon. But for now, I think. Once again, thank Milan. Once again, thank everyone who is here, and we will keep doing this stuff. I think. I really hope you enjoyed the talk, and I say bye to everybody. We finished the session. Take care and enjoy your Saturday night. But not everybody has night. It's different all over the world. So anyway, anytime there you have there.
Good luck, everybody. Good luck, everybody. See you.
Good night, everybody.
See you in the next.
Good morning, New Zealand, Argentina.
Morning.
We're just starting. We're just starting with celebrating on Saturday. We're just starting. You're finishing.
Sunday.
We're just starting. We'll get back.
That's great. The world goes on. Okay, bye everybody.
Bye. See you.
Bye. See
Bye.
you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.